Morley Robbins, known as the Magnesium Man, is the creator of the root cause protocol and a leading expert on magnesium's crucial role in our health, highlighting its interaction with minerals like iron and copper. With a BA in biology and an MBA in healthcare administration, Morley transitioned from a 32-year career in hospital administration to natural healing after a personal health crisis led him to discover the transformative power of magnesium and chiropractic care. The experience propelled him to delve into natural healing, leading to the foundation of the Magnesium Advocacy Group, which boasts 250,000 members. Morley, having conducted over 7,500 consultations worldwide, is dedicated to educating people on overcoming fatigue and chronic diseases by addressing mineral imbalances, particularly through the root cause protocol. His work emphasizes the importance of copper, magnesium, and iron in preventing inflammation and cellular metabolic dysfunction, aiming to shift the paradigm of nutritional health and wellness. And before we hop into the podcast, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. We have William, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, I didn't have the time for Deep Wealth Mastery, but I made the time and I'm glad I did. What I learned goes far beyond any other executive program or coach I've ever experienced. Or how about Bruce? Bruce says, before Deep Wealth Mastery, the challenge I had with most business programs, coaches, or books was that they were one-dimensional. Through Deep Wealth Mastery, I'm part of a richer community of other successful business owners. The idea shared forever changed the trajectory of the business, and best of all, the experience was fun. And we'll round things out with Stacy. Stacy said, I wish I had access to the Deep Wealth Mastery before my liquidity event, as it would have been extremely helpful. Deep Wealth Mastery exceeded my expectations in terms of content and quality. And you know what, my Deep Wealth Nation, why they're saying this is because Deep Wealth Mastery, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as you know, I said no to a 7-figure offer, and I created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery that helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure exit. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, if that's 2 years away or 20 years away, and you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as Scale for Ultimate Sale. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions, and they want to lock in their financial freedom and have success and fulfillment. That's the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, we have our terrific friend and superstar out there who is helping us ensure that our health is always our first wealth. Morley Robbins is back. And if this is your first time listening to us, please check the show notes. We'll have some links there for part 1 and part 2. So Morley, welcome back to the Deep Wealth Podcast. And if you recall, part 1, you put out the foundation of what really is 3 decades, give or take, of research on your part of, okay, what's the foundation of health? Then part 2, we spoke about what everyone should stop doing, even though they're probably being told by social media and health people in general that they should be doing that. And now for this last part of it, we're going to round things out and we're going to be talking about what we all should be doing to bring on that vibrant health. But before we go there, welcome back. How have you been since we last spoke? What's been going on with you?
Doing great. Delighted to be back here. Just a clarification, I spent 3 decades in hospitals and then 15 years of research. That 15 years feels like 3 decades, but I'm doing great. I'm just amazed at what I'm finding now. As we were chatting just before we got on, the biology of life and the human being is absolutely amazing. Maybe some point in the future we can talk about that. It's unlike anything people really understand. It's very important for our health.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that perhaps in another episode. And I have to share with you, Morley, and hopefully it's the same thing with our listeners, as I go out there and I educate myself on health and I hear someone who sounds pretty good in what they're saying. And then all of a sudden they throw something out there and go, uh-oh, Morley would not approve of this. Let me put a pause on that, because it's amazing of just how, geez, I don't even know what the word would be, just how rampant out there of these misbeliefs, these myths that people are sharing out there, and they sound pretty good. They sound really confident. They may even have a track record of success on the health side, but based on your research, based on what you've been finding now, we know that it's the opposite. And again, for Deep Wealth Nation, if you're saying, Jeffrey, what the heck are you and Morley doing on the Deep Wealth podcast talking about health? I'm a business owner. I want to talk about profits. I want to talk about having a terrific exit or liquidity event. And Morley and you and I, we can both nod our heads, and we've agreed in the previous episodes, health really is our first wealth. And if we're not healthy, we don't have that energy. We have that fog. We're not sure, are we making the right decisions, because we lack that clarity to be able to grow the business, run it, make all those important decisions. So what we're talking about today, really small, simple steps, day over day, that over time add up to huge results. With that in mind, Morley, if you're up for it, why don't we go through the 19 different steps that we should start doing? Because again, hopefully the listeners have stopped doing what we spoke about in the last episode. Now we're going to talk about what we should be doing. And I like how you've put this down into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then phase X. So phase 1, we're calling foundations. And the first thing that you're saying is start taking adrenal cocktails. And so someone who's listening may be saying, okay, I know what a cocktail is. I may even enjoy one from time to time, but what's an adrenal cocktail? So what's going on with that, and why should we start doing that?
It's a great place to start. When we're under stress, there's a mineral price to pay for our stress. And one of my favorite quotations of all time is from Mark Hyman, who's a celebrated functional doctor at Cleveland Clinic. And he once said that stress is the body's inability to make energy for the mind to respond to its environment. And I think those of us who've endured the last 4 years can really appreciate what Dr. Hyman was trying to say. These have been very stressful years. It doesn't seem like it's letting up. And what we've learned is that under acute stress, we lose magnesium and B vitamins. Those are the water-soluble nutrients. And then under chronic stress, we lose the availability of copper. And, well, you got to have magnesium and copper to make energy. And so what the adrenal cocktail is about is the adrenals are the first responders to stress. You got a problem? They sit on top of the kidneys. It's absolutely fascinating, Jeffrey. The left kidney or the left adrenal has a different focus than the right adrenal. We don't need to get into all the details of that, but it's just fascinating to think about that they would be the identical. No, actually, one is more of a pyramid shape and the other is more of a folded, like origami shape. It's absolutely fascinating. But what they're doing is stimulating mineral release to ensure continued energy production. And the electrolytes, calcium, sodium, potassium, are very important for energy production. And what the adrenals love are nutrients, not just those minerals, but also fat. There's another famous physician, Tom Cowan, people may have heard of, calls adrenal fatigue deficiency syndrome. And when I first heard him say that, I was like, what is he talking about? And then as I got to study the adrenals and their function, this guy's a genius. So retinol is very important. Vitamin A is very important for the adrenal function. And the other nutrient they especially like is vitamin C, not ascorbic acid, but real whole food vitamin C. And the reason why that's important is it has an enzyme at the core called tyrosinase. Tyrosinase is one of the oldest enzymes on the planet. Every life form that has pigmentation requires tyrosinase. When did they first figure this out? 1895, studying red mushrooms that turned black in the presence of oxygen. And they were fascinated by it. It's like, how did that happen? And so French scientists were dinking around with that many years ago. The thing is that the adrenals are easily fatigued by our constant exposure. And if you're worried about a business, worried about money, if you're worried about growing those things, you're going to be under stress. And anyone who's involved in that situation knows that. So that what we do is focus on remineralizing and renourishing this critical energy relay that's sitting on top of the kidneys. And so the adrenal glands are supposed to be about the size of walnut shells, and under constant repeated stress, they become the size of little peas. They actually shrink. And that shrunken tissue leads to more fatigue. So what we're trying to do is pump you up get you back to a more natural state of function. And it's nothing more complicated than getting some salt, sea salt, some potassium, some vitamin C, and renourishing these critical glands.
And so, Morley, on the adrenal cocktail, and I know we have a lot of ground to cover. We're spending some important time on this one. It's time well spent on that. So, when you're saying an adrenal cocktail, I heard you just say, hey, take some sea salt and some other things along the way. Real vitamin C, not the ascorbic acid. We spoke all about that in the previous episode. So, is that more or less what you're talking about? Perhaps when we wake up, put some sea salt in some water, have a glass of water to get us going? Or are you talking about the IV adrenal cocktails that people, you'll often hear them talking about? Oh, I had an adrenal cocktail. It was all IV. Is it both, one or the other? What's going on here? And also, what's the frequency of it if it is the adrenal cocktail via IV?
Great question. It was actually the soda company, Dr. Pepper, believe it or not, that
Hmm.
figured this out. If you go back in the time machine, you'll see that their logo was a clock face
Mhm.
with hands at 10, 2, and 4. And they studied this. When do people need a jolt? They're called the adrenal drop times, mid-morning and mid-afternoon.
Mhm.
When do people go on coffee breaks? Mid-morning, mid-afternoon. And so Dr. Pepper decided to capitalize on that. The best times to take it are these adrenal drop times, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. I wouldn't be doing an IV because that's ascorbic acid. It's not the whole, there is no liquid form of whole food vitamin C that I'm aware of. If someone knows of one, please let me know. But a lot of people take what's called a Myers cocktail. And John Myers was a med student at Johns Hopkins many years ago. And he invented that Myers cocktail because he had to be on duty. And he was drunk from a party the night before. So that's how he perked himself up with, it's a very funny story when you know the whole story. But in any event, Myers cocktail is not your friend. IV, ascorbic acid, not your friend. Adrenal cocktail, it is your friend. There's a classic adrenal cocktail, which is 4 ounces of fresh squeezed orange juice, not from a carton, not from a bottle that was squeezed 2 weeks ago. Fresh squeezed orange juice, a quarter teaspoon of sea salt, a quarter teaspoon of cream of tartar. And that's considered, that was the original adrenal cocktail that Susan Blackard developed many, many years ago. She was a nurse that became a naturopath, and she was the one who actually introduced me to this elixir. And I've had so many people say, I can't believe how much better I feel just by doing that, just to renourish the adrenal glands. And that became sort of the spark plug, if you will, for the starts in the arts.
Love that. And actually, you read my mind because that was my next question. In a previous episode, we used a car analogy. So let's continue with that.
Right.
So, if the adrenal glands, in some ways, it's like a spark plug. So, just like in a car, if a spark plug gets dirty, the car
Right.
may sputter when you go to start it, or it may not even start at all. And either you have to clean the spark plug or possibly even replace it. Well, we can't replace our adrenal glands. But in
No,
this case, with the adrenal cocktail and what we're going to be talking about next, with the next start steps, so this would be cleaning it, optimizing it, giving the body the right environment. Because as we said last time, hey, if you can balance your copper, your magnesium, your iron, some of the other minerals, if you can have that balanced out, but really with copper leading the charge, the body then has what it needs to put itself back into balance, to get that harmony going again, to repair and fix whatever damage may be done. Am I on base with that?
no, you're absolutely right. Absolutely true.
Terrific. Okay.
And I think what's important, Dick, real quick, we've been trained in the modern era to believe what's the three-letter word in believe? Why? But we've been trained
Hmm.
to believe that our body is really stupid and it won't work until you involve a doctor. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
The body responds to nutrients. Real nutrients are what really get our blueprint going for more energy and more balanced approach to
Yeah, it's amazing the wisdom, the inner wisdom of the body. It just knows. Case in point, heaven forbid you cut yourself. Well, are you having to read up in an encyclopedia what you should do, or you just let the body do what it needs to do? And magically, whatever has gone on, the body heals itself and it's as though it never happened. So, with that said, okay, we're going to put a check to start taking adrenal cocktails, real vitamin C, a little bit of sea salt along the way, and a few other things. And I guess we can look up adrenal cocktails out there in terms of perhaps different variations of what we like. But as long as it's not ascorbic vitamin C or vitamin
Mhm.
C as in a juice from a box that's been homogenized and it's been changed in terms of what it is, it's the actual real stuff. So, for steps two, three, four, and five of what we're starting, I can see why you put them as foundational. I'm going to group them together because you're
Yeah,
talking about in number two, taking mineral drops or applying transdermal magnesium. We spoke a little bit about that. We'll come back to that.
right.
Taking whole food vitamin C or WFC for whole food vitamin C complex, taking magnesium, and taking bioavailable copper. So,
Right.
magnesium, whole food vitamin C, bioavailable copper. So, that rounds out the foundations. What do you want us to know about the magnesium, either ingesting it or transdermally or the whole food vitamin C, the magnesium, the copper? What's going on with that you want us to know?
The most important thing to understand about magnesium, it's involved in so many different metabolic reactions, but there's a Harvard-based psychiatrist who refers to magnesium as the chill pill. And it's very effective at recalibrating our perception of our situation. When we're magnesium deficient, the world starts to close in on us. Things start to look bigger and brighter than they really are. We overreact
Mm-hmm.
because we're not able to respond to the stressors.
Mm-hmm.
So magnesium plays a very critical role to calm us down, to
Mm-hmm.
allow us to really monitor our situation and say, what are some options? Instead of going into a reptilian brain, we're able to stay cerebral and say, let's think this through. So magnesium is very important there. The copper, as we've talked about it, we could spend a week talking about what copper does. But the important thing is to know it as a source of energy
Mm-hmm.
and a source of regulation in the body. And back to the vitamin C, it's such a critical component of our metabolism by virtue of its relationship with introducing tyrosinase, which is a very important enzyme that drives pigmentation in our body, but it also supports many other functions. And we don't think about that. It's a critical factor in our immune system. The immune system is very dependent on whole food vitamin C. And giving us ascorbic acid was a wicked twist. Our body is designed to respond to these core nutrients. And I think that's a great clustering of them to round out the discussion there.
And Morley, what's standing out for me before we go on to phase two? A few things. Someone may be saying to him or herself, hey, you know what, Morley, I'm doing great. I'm taking all the magnesium from the last episode and the one before that. I'm following your formula and I figured out my body weight, the number of grams, and I'm right in there. I know you would likely chime in and say, well, hey, not so fast, because if you don't have enough copper, your body isn't able to properly absorb and then redistribute that magnesium in the way that it needs. So it's amazing how copper, it would be equivalent to a gateway or to a key, that if you don't have the right level of copper, you may have the right level of magnesium, but your body may not have access to that. And it's so overlooked, copper, and doing all the right things. And then I would imagine if we went back maybe to our grandparents or our great grandparents, the thought of them getting food out of a box, or in this case, juice out of a box, would seem asinine, if I can use that word to them. It'd be, why would you
Absolutely.
ever want to do that when you can get it from fresh,
Right.
right from the fruit? Why would you want to go into a box? And it's just amazing how values have changed, not
Mhm.
necessarily for the better, of how we've been educated, how we've been trained. If it doesn't come from a box, it's either too time consuming or maybe it's not healthy, or why put up that fuss and that muss to get it done, because there's an agenda here. We have the companies driving us to buy their products, which is being done for their benefit. How do I preserve this so it lasts as long as possible, that I don't have to keep on doing runs and wasting my own supply, and it's not for our best interest? Thoughts about that?
When you think back to the turn of the century, the changes that took place in the food system in the early 1900s are nothing short of staggering.
Mm-hmm.
I think about my grandparents and great grandparents. What was it like in the kitchen when that began to take place? And I'm sure it was viewed as a convenience. Oh my gosh, I don't have to do all this cooking and I can cut some corners here. And at the time, that was seen as a real benefit to society. We didn't know that there was a price to pay. And I
Hmm.
think we're now witnessing it 3 or 4 generations later. And just the introduction of sugar, talk about an anti-nutrient. Sugar is not food. You got to have nutrients in the substance to be called food. It is an additive, but it's not a food. And when you really begin to study what sugar does to our metabolism,
Hmm.
what it does to actually lower energy production, it's just hard to fathom that our ancestors didn't realize that the sugar that was being added at the turn of the century to make the processed food taste better was without the sugar, it tasted like at the time they weren't thinking about what are the second and third order impacts. They were just really relieved to have some more time on their hands. And I guess really what one of the major drivers in human society is we're lazy at our very core. We're always looking for ways that we can make our life easier. And I guess there's a wisdom to that. We're trying to be as efficient with our energy expenditure as possible. But I don't think the powers that be who were reformatting the food system fully informed us about the prices that we were paying. And now we're beginning to piece the puzzle together and we see what has happened. And it's reversible, but it takes a lot of discipline. It just takes more time to respond to
And
that.
absolutely. And for Deep Wealth Nation, really the big takeaway here is not just to be successful in business, because after all, you could be successful in business, but if you're not around long enough or you don't have the energy, what's the point of all that? And so, one of the big takeaways and what Morley has kindly been sharing with us and revealing for us is we need to take health into our own hands. Just like, would you leave the health of your business just in the hands of your accountants? As good as your accountants may be, there's no way they're going to take it to the level that you can take it as an entrepreneur. Same thing with their health. And it's actually a great segue into phase two. So, phase one, foundations, it's all about magnesium, copper, whole food vitamin C to give us a solid foundation to work with. And now in phase two, we're starting steps 6 through 10. And so,
Mhm.
step 6, we put into an A and a B, but it's eating organic, ancestral whole foods and drinking mineralized filtered water. So, on the surface, it sounds simple, but we're not going to confuse simple with simplicity. So, ancestral whole foods that are organic and mineralized filtered water. What's going on there, Morley?
We're trying to restore what we're being exposed to, what our ancestors would have recognized. Our body is designed for minerals and nutrients. It recognizes, and wherever we can bring those in their simple form, the body responds to them. And I think one of the greatest that we face is what's in our water. Very few people have actually analyzed their water and even
Mm-hmm.
know what the mineral content is, what the heavy metal content is, what the chemical content. It's not a pretty picture, especially if you live in a municipal setting. And you just assume, well, surely my city government would not be seeking to harm me. And they're not. That's not the intent. That's what I'm implying. The point is, there's a lot of stuff in there that you don't even know about. Well, then we come out into the countryside, and I'm shocked at the number of people who don't analyze their water. They just dig a well and go for it. And like the amount of iron and manganese in countryside wells is staggering. Iron and manganese is not your friend, folks. Those are the metals in swamps. Swamps are a breeding ground for some really crazy animals. And so people don't think about that. And all we're trying to do is build on the genius of, say, Weston A. Price, Melvin Page, Royal Lee. These were famous dentists in the 1900s, born in the late 1800s, but they were very active in the 1900s. And we're only now in that third century, only now in the 21st century, do we realize their genius.
Mm-hmm.
And we're now facing the challenge of, with regenerative farming, trying to restore the soil. That actually, we're trying to restore it to soil so that we can grow foods the way our ancestors. And so it is a process, but getting mineralized water, clean mineralized water, and nutrient dense food in its most natural form is the objective. And it's, trust me, it's easier said than done. And there's energy that's expended today to get that. And you've got to have the discipline and the commitment to make it a reality.
It's interesting, Morley, both where I live and when I travel, they're all metropolitan cities and the millions of people, lots of choices for where to get food. But I would say more times than not, it feels, at least to me, that I'm in a food desert. And you'd be saying, wait a minute, Jeffrey, what do you mean food desert? You've got a store where you can buy some food just about on every corner. And yes, that's right, but it's highly processed food, all kinds of chemicals and additives, things that aren't great. And so when we're talking about organic, ancestral whole foods, we're not talking about the whole foods of the store. We're talking about foods that, if it has a label on it, it's probably not a whole food. And it's certainly something that you don't want to be doing. So we're talking about food the way that nature had intended, whether it's organic, fresh fruits, or perhaps some kind of protein, whatever the case may be, where it's not processed or at least minimally processed, and it allows our body to absorb all the nutrients that's in there. And so think about that, because I know when I'm traveling, or even in my own city, it's hard for me, Morley, to
Mhm.
find a healthy meal or even feel comfortable eating, because ignorance is not bliss. And knowing what I know and what's in that food, sure, it may taste great at the time, but I know there's a price to be paid later on.
Years ago, when Dr. Liz and I were living in Louisiana, there was a restaurant that we used to frequent. They had really good steaks.
Mhm.
And so, what do you like before you eat a steak? I like a nice roll and some butter. They brought out this, the roll hadn't changed, but they had something, it looked like whipped butter, but
Mhm.
it didn't taste like whipped butter. I asked the server, I said, I'm curious, what is this? She says, well, it's butter. I said, really? I said, I'd like to see the container that it
Mhm.
came from, which is an unusual request in a nice restaurant. But she was a good sport. She recognized us and she said, well, no, I'm happy to go do it. Comes out, she was beet red. She was mortified. They had flipped it. They'd
Mhm.
moved away from whipped butter to margarine.
Mm.
She didn't know this. She'd been serving this daily for months, thinking that she was doing the customers a favor. And she was really upset. That's the kind of stuff that people don't think about. They'll go to the restaurant, they'll have the spread, and then they'll go about their business and not think to say, what is this? What am I really eating? Or we have a very dear friend down in Florida, and when she goes to a restaurant, that's a great stance that she takes. She says, does anything that I'm about to eat, does it have canola oil? And the waiter or server, usually they don't know.
Mhm.
And then she'll follow up with the following statement. She says, it's very important that you find out because I will go into anaphylactic shock if I'm exposed to canola.
Mhm.
Of course, the server starts to panic. And they always come back with the skinny because they don't want to have someone go into shock in their restaurant.
Mhm.
And those are the kind of questions we need to be asking to get these food emporiums to wake up that they have a responsibility. They're not just serving calories, they're supposed to be serving nutrition. And I think we've blurred the lines now. We don't really know what we're eating, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And I have no affinity or association with an app that I use. It's called the Seed Oil Scout. And
Yeah,
whatever city that you're in, you put in that restaurant. And if other people have been there, they will rate it and tell you, is it safe to eat or are there seed oils here? And so check it out in your favorite app store, Seed Oil Scout. And at least for me, that's helpful. Even in my hometown or when I'm traveling, I'll put that in there. And before we go on to step 7, 8, 9, and 10, which again, I'm going to group because they're vitamins that we're taking. So organic, and it's important to have organic because as we spoke about on the previous podcast episodes, if it's not organic, and organic probably already has some chemicals unintended from some of the fields around it. But if it's not organic, there's certainly going to be glyphosate and toxins and poisons that we don't want to have in it. So
right.
organic wherever possible, ancestral whole foods and filtered water, not in a plastic bottle. If you're at home, I have a reverse osmosis system. I have it remineralized when it comes back out and stored in glass or in stainless steel, definitely not in plastic. So have clean water, whole foods. And then for phase 2, the supporting nutrients to give the body what it needs to get back to vibrant health, taking Mother Nature sources for B vitamins, taking whole food vitamin E complex, taking boron, and taking cod liver oil. Okay, so vitamin B, vitamin E, boron, cod liver oil. What's going on there?
These are B vitamins are profoundly important, especially when they're in their natural form, like through bee pollen is a great source, or organ meats, especially liver, is a great source of real B vitamins. The ones we get out of a bottle are synthetic and don't really want to go there. But I have this theory that the B vitamins require copper. We don't have the time now to get into the biochemistry behind it, but it seems inescapable in the relationship. But the role of the B vitamins is to help regulate iron. You begin to get it, you start to piece apart the different B vitamins that we rely on daily, and they're involved in some different form of iron metabolism. It's absolutely fascinating. But vitamin E is particularly important for antioxidant. It's one of the master antioxidants in our body, and it's historically it's been found in grains. Wheat germ oil from grain, one of the richest sources of vitamin E.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about alpha tocopherol. There's 4 tocopherols, and there's 4 what are called tocotrienols. And ideally, it should have selenium at its core. And so it's a multifaceted powerhouse to neutralize oxidative stress, especially in our cell membranes and our organelle membranes.
Mm-hmm.
And what vitamin E is known as is a chain breaking antioxidant. What does that mean? When iron causes oxidative stress, which it's want to do, it's very good at it, creates a chain reaction of oxidative stress. The hydrocarbons start to change all the way around the organelle. And what does vitamin E do? Shuts that down, stops it. And people don't realize how powerful this antioxidant is and how hard it is to find in an era when everyone is gluten intolerant.
Mm-hmm.
People think that there's gluten inside wheat germ oil. No, there isn't. It doesn't matter what its source, it's not going to have gluten inside it. And so it's a very powerful mechanism for reducing oxidative stress. But boron, it's not a well understood nutrient. I think what its real gift is, it mops up what I call accidents with oxygen. They're called oxidants, reactive oxygen species. And boron seems to have an affinity for grabbing these variations of oxygen so they don't further react with other components in our body. So it's an absolute blessing. And people find that it's like it can be a game-changing addition to their nutrient profile. It doesn't take a lot. You can get a lot of mileage out of 3 milligrams of boron. There's some people who will take it to an extreme. I don't think it's necessary, but they're very beneficial. And then what was the 4th component?
Cod liver oil.
Cod liver oil is a mainstay of our ancestors' nutrition, in large part because of its ability to provide rich sources of retinol, animal-based vitamin A, and there is also vitamin D. But it's in a ratio that Mother Nature finds beneficial. In the Atlantic cod, you have a ratio of 10 to 1, 10 parts vitamin A to 1 part vitamin D. In Alaskan cod, it's 20 to 1. And so it's just, waters must be colder up in Alaska. That's why they have to have that extra retinol. But literally, our ancestors had that every day growing up, whether they wanted it or not. And I can assure you that even though the pictures you've seen of your grandparents and great-grandparents, and they look old, they're much more vital than you are at a younger age today. And so it's a very important source of the retinol, which is really the critical factor to make copper bioavailable. Vitamin A activates 2 very important enzymes. They're copper pumps called ATP7A and ATP7B. You've never heard of them. Chances are your doctor's never heard of them. But what they do is load up all of the copper enzymes that run and regulate the body. But it takes retinol, derivative of retinol, called 13-retinoic acid. Do I need to know that? No, but it's just this is a hormone. And retinol actually has 4 hormones in it. Vitamin D only has 1. That's why retinol is so important. It's a very powerful source of nutrition. It's nutrient dense, as they say, and cod liver oil is one of the most important aspects of the RCP. But again, we're very fussy about where we get it. We're very particular about the sources of it. And I think you have to be very careful about where you get yours, because it's about 100 different brands out there, but there are only two or three that we really stand behind within the
Morley, you
RCP.
read my mind on all of that. So really with phase two, my takeaway with the B vitamins, the vitamin E complex, the boron, the cod liver oil, and I'll circle back to those in just a moment. It's in layman's terms, my takeaway is when we have those available to the body at the right levels from the right sources, it's helping our body prevent itself from aging, from oxidating, from
Absolutely.
rusting from the inside out, just like if we took a steel beam and we left it exposed to the elements, it's going to rust. And over time, it's going to crumble and nothing's going to be there. Well, we don't see it inside our body, but if we're not having the B vitamins, the E complex, the boron, the cod liver oil, our body from the oxidation is rusting from the inside out. And this helps keep us younger, keep the wrinkles off, keep us more vibrant. And then what I also heard you say, and we spoke about this in some of the previous episodes, a vitamin just isn't a vitamin. Number one, you want to make sure that you're getting a high quality vitamin. So going to your favorite box store and whatever's on special for a ridiculously low price, remember you're putting that into your body is probably not where you want to be. And prevention is where it's at. So investing in your health with a high quality vitamin, yes, it may cost more than what others are, but it's for your longevity, it's for your health. And the last takeaway, when you spoke about cod liver oil, you mentioned retinol and vitamin A and vitamin D. But the key there was with the right source of cod liver oil, it's the way nature intended in the right ratios, and our body's likely more bioavailable than the synthetic versions of it. And that's why you're recommending the cod liver oil over what we said to stop in the last episode, stop taking the vitamin D and all the synthetics that go along with that. So, how am I doing with that summary of the phase two, the supporting nutrients?
I'm loving it because this series of conversations is rapidly becoming a wonderful source for the layperson to learn what's this RCP all about. Because what I enjoy about your approach, Jeffrey, is you're high energy, you're high IQ, you're curious, but you're really trying to simplify the message for people who are just trying to feel better. You studied nutrition and metabolism carefully just because that's your nature, but you don't have a typical nutritionist background. You don't appreciate it as much as I do. You bring such a fresh perspective of why are we doing this? Why do we need to stop doing that? And why do we need to start doing? So I really appreciate the energy you put into this. Lay people understand, what do I need to do to feel better? And you're getting it down to its essence. I really appreciate it, sincerely.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And again, for our listeners, from Morley's perspective, from my perspective, from the team here at Deep Wealth, our perspective, our health is our first wealth. You're not going to hear this anywhere else. And if you're wondering, okay, Jeffrey Morley, I like what you're saying, but I'm confused. B vitamins, E complex, boron, cod liver oil, it seems so overwhelming. Again, in the show notes, there are links. We'll take you to Morley's site, the root cause protocol. You can get a beautiful booklet that he's put together in PDF form. It's all free. Morley has a gazillion resources there. You can take the thinking out of it. And I know at the end of each of the episodes for the past two, and I'm sure you'll do this again for this one, you can reach out to Morley directly. Why not become a client of Morley, as I've been? And it's amazing the deep dive that we do. And he can personalize it. Okay, well, Jeffrey, given with your situation, what's going on here, do this instead of that. And it's really optimizing our health because, Morley, I've said this to you before, I'm going to say it again. What you've researched, and this is not a guess, as you said, it's nearly 2 decades, over 15 years of doing a deep dive, speaking to the scientists and the researchers who are putting out these reports, not buying into these bait click headlines that are out there. You're actually going behind the scenes to find out what nobody is talking about, but everyone should be talking about, because our health, we need to become our own practitioner, our own doctor of our own health. No one else is going to do it for us. We can do it for ourselves. When it works for ourselves, we can share it with our loved ones, with our friends, with our team, with our colleagues to really make a better life. Because what we now consider normal, waking up in pain, with brain fog, not having the energy, that's not normal. Don't chalk that up to, well, as one gets older, this is what comes along with it. It's not true. And Morley, to your point, if you look at our grandparents, our great grandparents, Yeah, the pictures may not do them justice, but they're more vibrant. They're healthier than we are, even if they're at an older age. And so we really are demystifying this false information that's been put out there for corporations' profit agendas. How am I doing with that?
No, it's great. What I'm thinking about is years ago, a conversation with a famous consultant for the natural food industry. And he taught me the importance of I'm constantly being asked, "Hey, Michael, what's new?" And he said, it taught me to ask a more important question: what's enduring? And what you and I are talking about are the enduring qualities for good health, for good nutrition. As I was sitting here listening to what you were just sharing about, I think part of the conflict is the mechanisms to make one wealthy. People are constantly looking for new ways to generate wealth. And I think what we have is this interesting pairing of what's new for generating wealth, what's enduring for generating health. And it's an interesting conflict there. Although, as I'm having this thought, I would guess that the oldest forms of generating wealth, having land,
Mhm.
having an investment portfolio, having a business, that hasn't changed. That's been
Mhm.
an enduring basis of generating wealth. I think at the fringe of it is what's new. What's the new way that I can create some new avenue of wealth? I think it's important for people to know that as it relates to health, you got to do what's enduring. Focus on that. And what we're trying to do is really drill into these enduring attributes of the starts to make sure that you're able.
Sure. And Morley, before we go to phase three, advanced nutrients, really what's
Mhm.
interesting here with what you're suggesting, yes, it takes some additional time, but it's like anything else. Once you learn something new, it becomes a habit, it becomes a ritual. You don't even think about it. And yes, it does take some additional money. What we're talking about here, this is not going to cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars or something crazy
No,
like that.
no,
This is relatively speaking, it's a rounding error compared to, well, what would it cost you if you're in the hospital, heaven forbid? Or what would it cost you for a lifetime of expensive prescriptions and medications that you can't get off of? And one prescription drug causes side effects that you're now giving another prescription drug. So when you put it into that kind of context, where really you're getting your time back, when you have your free time, you're mobile, you're vibrant, you can enjoy it in whichever way you want to enjoy it. What's that worth to you? And the earlier that we start, the earlier that we benefit. So there's a huge ROI from doing that. And it's really a great segue because in phase one, we laid the foundation of okay, we've got to spruce up our adrenals, and we talked about an adrenal cocktail. We then talked about magnesium and whole food vitamin C and bioavailable copper. That's the foundation. And then the supporting nutrients, we spoke about organic ancestral whole foods, filtered water that's mineralized, B vitamins, vitamin E complex, boron, cod liver oil. So that's the supporting nutrients. And now we're getting a little more advanced, but really not that much more because now we're talking about advanced nutrients. And so for step 11, we're starting to take taurine. Step 12, we're starting to take diatomaceous earth. Try and say that 12 times fast. And step 13, we're getting iodine from food. So, with those three nutrients, Morley, what's the story behind the story? Why those?
and taurine is a very important factor for helping to make the copper protein ceruloplasmin. People may have heard of the tau protein, especially if they're at all aware of Alzheimer's. There's a tau protein that gets, well, the taurine helps to deal with that. But what it's really doing is it's helping to facilitate the creation of this master antioxidant protein that's produced largely in our liver. Diatomaceous earth is a very different factor. These are ancient, and if you look at them under a microscope, they look like little saw blades, and people think that's what their action is. What they do, diatomaceous earth, it's very effective dehydrating agent. And what it does is it helps to remove parasites from our digestive. And the reason why we're focused on that is that it's very helpful to get rid of some of these pathogens. It can be very disruptive to the natural flow and communication and digestive properties of the intestine. And so we're very mindful of that. Uh, as our thinking has evolved, we've come to realize that these pathogens, they're found more than just in the, it's a great place to start. And what you want to do when you do DE, as it's called, you want to go low and go slow. You want to start with a small amount and then gradually build up to the recommended amounts that we've got there, because it will overwhelm your system. And you don't want to do that. There's no advantage to rushing this process. I joke with my clients that invariably they want to get well yesterday. They're always in a hurry, always want to feel better soon, but the body doesn't respond to that kind of pressure. I always forget the third component, iodine, of course. I think iodine is a very incompletely understood element on the planet. We know of its importance in thyroid function, but it's also involved in, again, ceruloplasmin function. Iodine also has the ability to oxidize iron, so that when iron gets exposed to ceruloplasmin, it goes from being ferrous iron to ferric iron, so that it can be bound to either transferrin or put into ferrite. I'm not trying to turn everyone into biochemists. I want you to know there's a reason for that. You need to be in the right state of iron to do that. Well, in that process, when the copper protein is made, water is given off. Iodine has the exact same ability to turn that ferrous iron into ferric iron with no water given off. And so there's an expenditure of making that change. And so iodine is important to have, but what we're really focusing on in this protocol is to get copper back to its role as a regulator and not become dependent upon elements like iodine that I think have been, in my opinion, have been overused by the world of conventional medicine because they've not been trained. I'm not denying its role in thyroid function, but even there, I think copper plays a much greater role than people realize. Retinol plays a much bigger role in the thyroid than people realize. And iodine has been put into the spotlight, I think, inappropriately. And we recognize its importance, but it's in the context of an orchestra of other nutrients. We're not putting undue special attention on iodine per se.
And what's interesting about all of this, Morley, is a whole system that painstakingly over decades that you've put together, the root cause protocol. For the Deep Health Nation, why not try it? Try it for 30 days, try it for 60 days, see if you feel a difference. And if you don't, okay, you can stop, because the beautiful thing about this is not going to, in a negative way, permanently affect you, that you can do something terribly wrong. And not that we want anyone to take more than what they should. And again, this is not medical advice. Please consult with your doctor. Worst case scenario, Morley, if I took something more than what I should have, well, then maybe I won't feel well for a short period of time, but I'll get back to normal right away. Lessons learned, and I can adjust whatever dosage that I'm taking. But why not try this and see how you feel? That's the ultimate test. Be your own data point of one and see what works, what doesn't work. Taking a step back, the alternative in my books is really no alternative, where we're being robbed of our health, of our energy, of our clarity, and ultimately of our longevity and our success. And so we spoke about phase 3, the advanced nutrients, and that was taurine, the DE, iodine from food. And so now we're wrapping it up. We're starting steps 14 through 19. We call this phase X, lifestyle upgrades. And so with starting donating blood, and particularly for the males out there, donating blood is absolutely crucial. We spoke about this in the last episode, but what would be a quick recap of why it's important, particularly for the men out there, to donate blood?
You want to lower your oxidative stress in your body, period. Fastest way to do it is by donating blood. There is no enzymatic nor hormonal mechanism to lower iron in our body. And every day we're on planet Earth, we accumulate at least 1 milligram of iron. So I'm 71 times 365. That's 26,000 milligrams of iron in my body. And all men are designed for about 5,000 milligrams. So I've got a 5 times multiple of iron in my body. That's what's driving the wrinkles in my face and my hair loss and things like that. And so It's not rocket science, folks. Aging is iron accumulation, period. They don't talk about this in the literature, except in very elite publications. Now, this is a major dynamic that's hidden from the populace, that aging is a result of excess iron. And what are they doing with iron? They're adding it to our food, they're adding it to our supplements, recommending it wherever they can. And they're not telling us that it needs to be restricted, it needs to be regulated, that it needs to be in circulation. And so what the
Bless
focus
you.
on, thank you, what the focus on blood donations is help us lower the footprint of iron to lower the impact of oxidative stress. And that's really, in its essence, that's what that is intended to do.
Okay, so we're donating blood, particularly for men. And Morley, if a woman is not in menopause, I take it she's okay with what's going on, just with the natural cycles of what's happening there. But perhaps someone on the female persuasion who is in menopause, they should be donating blood as well.
Absolutely. A woman in menopause is a man and needs to be donating just as much on a quarterly basis. Women who are menstruating, we recommend a couple times a year, but there are many women in the RCP community who donate 4 times a year on top of their monthly cycle. And they find that they feel much better, they're much more alert, that they just feel lighter, if you will. We don't realize they started adding iron to the food system in 1941. So it's about 80 years. We don't realize what that has done over the last 2 or 3 generations. It's had an impact. And so we're trying to reverse that.
Sure. And again, taking a step back, the narrative of everything that we've been speaking about, hey, when you have enough copper, and most of us don't have high amount of copper or the right amount of copper that we need for our body. When we have the right amount of copper with the right magnesium, we're preventing that rusting from the inside out, which is premature aging, causing all kinds of diseases. And everything that we've been speaking about, from the kinds of food and water that we drink to the supplements that we're taking now to the lifestyle upgrades, is to support that healthy lifestyle. So we go from donating blood to really, again, reduce the tendency of the body to rust from the inside out, particularly if you're in menopause, if you're a woman, or for men in general. So now we're going to step 15, start managing histamine levels and reactions. So what's going on? What is histamine, for someone who's listening and said, yeah, I've heard about that, but I don't really know what that means on the health side. What's going on there?
When the 2 Swedish physiologists first wrote about this copper protein, ceruloplasmin, again, sky blue in the blood, they commented that ceruloplasmin in the presence of histamines expresses an enzyme called histaminase.
Okay.
Today we know it as diamine oxidase, DAO, but there was a 4-fold increase in histaminase function in the presence of histamines. There are a lot of people out there who are very reactive to their environment, to their food environment, to the airborne allergens. And they think of it as a disease. No, it's a mineral deficiency. Copper isn't prevalent enough in your body to run the ceruloplasmin protein to regulate the histamines. All that histamines are is it's the hormone of alert. Hey, we got a problem. We got to respond. Wake up. Come on. And so the body uses these signals, the mechanism of relief, and as a mechanism of alert. And because of the modern food system, modern farming practices, we don't have the density of these nutrients that we need in order to be able to regulate our environment. Like when I was born, Jeffrey, I was allergic to everything but goat's milk and eggs. And my parents were living in South Carolina, in Greenville, and there was a pediatrician there who knew that I would be able to recover just eating goat's milk and eggs. And that's all I had for over a year. Well, what's in goat's milk? What's in eggs? A very important protein that chelates iron. And now, here I am, 70 years later, I can eat anything I want. And I was actually fine by the time I was 2 or 3. People have lost that natural understanding about where the problem really lies. And when iron builds up in the body, as it's wont to do, it's going to make us more reactive. As soon as I'm talking to someone who is sensitive or reactive to their environment, I know their copper is too low
Mhm.
and their iron is too high. That's going to drive more histamines. What happens is the expression that's used in the lay literature as well as the scientific literature is the histamine bucket fills up and then it spills over. Well, the histamine bucket is not supposed to fill up if you have ceruloplasmin neutralizing it, regulating it. And that's where we've gone awry is we don't know that there's a natural mechanism for regulating histamine.
And it's interesting because donating blood, which helps regulate so many things, it's free. We're paying it forward. We're doing a terrific
Right?
service for those that need blood in an emergency. And again, many of these things, instead of going out and buying that very expensive Frankenstein food that's being made by industry, if we took that money and we put it back into the organic, the ancestral whole foods, one, we're going to feel better. And two, I would suspect it's not going to be any more expensive, particularly if you throw in long term wise what it means for our health, staying off the medication, staying out of the hospital, that it really is a low investment, low risk, high return. And really for phase X, as we go into the next steps, so number 14, we start donating blood. Number 15, we start managing histamine levels and reactions. For 16, 17, 18, 19, I'm going to group them together because to me, yes, they're separate, but they're really one and the same. So 16, we're talking about releasing emotional stress. 17, we're starting to strengthen the bioenergetic field. Number 18, we're starting to get regular sunlight. And then 19, we're starting to do joyful movement. And so to me, really, the bioenergetic field, you can talk about that, the sunlight, the joyful movement, I imagine done right. Number one, it's all free. And two, it's also reducing or releasing the emotional stress. So, what's going on with the stress, the bioenergetic field, sunlight, movement?
It's really trying to bring back the natural rhythm of the body. We're designed to be in light, designed to be in movement. Uh, the concept of emotion, it's supposed to be moving. They're supposed to move through us. What happens? They get
Sure.
stuck. We get stuck. We get stuck on some emotion, some event. And it's interesting, Jeffrey, when I started this work 15 years ago, I was 100% Newtonian. Some physical substance missing, we need a nutrient, vitamin,
Hmm.
mineral, whatever. And now, 15 years later, as I really have come to understand what's going on, the challenges that we face, I'm really 100% quantum in the sense that our ailments start with some emotional response to our situation. And it's very important for people to realize just how powerful these emotions can be. Some of these emotions we carry our whole life. And I'm not trying to become Dr. Phil here, but
Hmm.
we've got to recognize that these unresolved emotional events of our past, these unresolved traumas, and really what's behind all of that is fear. Because when you don't feel like you've resolved something, you're afraid of it. Really what happens. And there's a lot of literature to back that up. Well, we spell the word fear a little differently in the RCP community. It's FE hyphen AR. And that way we see the symbol for iron,
Hmm.
Fe. And then the word becomes iron attracts rust. And what people need to realize is that when you are in a state of fear, whether you recognize it consciously or subconsciously, you become a magnet for iron. And it's
Hmm.
absolutely a fact. It's in the literature, and there are some amazing articles. And so, what we really seek to get people to do is tap into them and turn that fear into fuel, release those emotions, get them moving again, get the perception of the problem resolved so that you can get on with your life. There have been many practitioners who focused here. Louise Hay would be a legendary figure,
Sure.
help understand how these emotions affect our physiology. We really have come to realize how important this resolution process is. You can
Hmm.
do emotional freedom technique, emotion code, body code, NET. There are many different channels of recovery, but
Hmm.
would encourage people to do it. But there's people who are drawn to the RCP, the root cause protocol, are high IQ. People that are listening to this, especially this third installment, you've got high IQ. Congratulations.
Hmm.
But there's two genetic defects with people with high IQ. We're control freaks and we love complexity. Well, what I've learned is that when you're working with another practitioner, and it's really important that you do, it's more complicated. And you're going to love that.
Hmm.
But what the practitioner really does is teach you how to let go of your fear, teach you how to let go of this unresolved emotion, something that only a practitioner can do. That because we're high IQ, we think we can solve all of our problems. And
Sure.
we can't. And so it's very important to surrender to that process. And that's really what this section does, is help people do these practices to get back into a healthy rhythm. And that's really what they're designed to do.
And again, for Deep Wealth Nation, when you're out there and it comes time to do your taxes, are you saying to yourself, I'm really smart, I'm successful, I'm going to do my taxes? Or are you more likely reaching out to a very well experienced accountant who is going to do the right job, save you all kinds of time, get things done, put you ahead of the game? So, why not do the same thing with your health? In fact, that's really the first thing that we should be doing because, after all, our health is our first wealth. So, Morley, if I take a step back here, and I'm looking not only at today's episode, and again, for Deep Wealth Nation, in the show notes, you'll have the links to the first two episodes that we've done, what we've done collectively, thanks to your 15 plus years of a deep dive on the research. You've shared with us the importance of copper, magnesium, and how the interplay of those two can help prevent the overloading of iron so we don't rust from the inside out. Then in episode two, you shared with us what we should stop doing, even though many of those things are likely being told by the well established medical community. They're not doing it maliciously. That's what they've learned. That's what they've been told. They didn't really go behind the headlines. And what they're telling us, more likely than not, is wrong. And we dispelled all kinds of myths on that one. And then for this third episode, what you've been sharing with us, Morley, is hey, now that you've stopped doing that, now that you got all that out of your life, because part of success, as much of knowing what to do, it's also knowing what not to do. That's what we did in episode two. And now in this episode, episode three or part three, what you're sharing with us, okay, now that you stop doing those things, let's start doing those things. And yeah, okay, there's some fancy terms in there and maybe some vitamins that someone hasn't heard of. But by and large, it's not complicated. What you're really sharing is okay, take whole food, organic food, the way that Mother Nature intended it to be. Have filtered water. Take a few supplements here and there. Get out in the sun. Release that stress. Move joyfully. Donate some blood. It's not complicated. It's not expensive. It's not really time consuming once you do that. And you've done the whole root cause protocol that people, again, in the show notes, they can click on that link, get the free information and all the resources, reach out to you. Really, it's a blueprint. It's a pathway to health. Just like at Deep Wealth, we have all these blueprints to increase profits and ultimately the value of the business. You've created these blueprints, Morley, with your life research. Okay, what's the blueprint to become healthy, to become vibrant, to wake up energetic, to not have those aches and pains? And you've really put it together in a done for you system. How am I doing with that? Thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a great summary. And I think it's important for people to realize that this protocol challenges the status quo, challenges the bantered about recommendations on the internet for a reason, because I don't believe that we're being completely informed about the choices that we're making. Again, I'm a byproduct of the system. I worked in hospitals for 32 years, began to have doubts about it. And as I began to get into the scientific literature, had grave concerns about what was happening. And so it was a moment of integrity. And I decided I couldn't stay on the sidelines. And I chose to buck the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I can assure you, there's stress involved in bucking. I don't fear for my life. And I sleep well at night. I want you to know I have a very clear conscience. But it is not easy to challenge the status quo daily. But that's what we do within the RCP. There are rich rewards for doing it. Invariably, every week, I hear from a handful of people thanking me and thanking Mother Nature, really, for saving their life. And I don't say that to be braggadocious. It's a very humbling experience. But there are simple steps that can be taken using time-honored commitment to good nutrition to increase your vitality, increase your energy, increase your health, which is, Jeffrey is pointing out, it is our first wealth. When we have our health, we have the most important of our vitality, and that's what we're really striving for in this program.
Absolutely. And really, as entrepreneurs, founders, business owners, really the renegades out there, we are challenging the status quo on the business side. We're used to it. We're used to people saying, hey, it's never going to work. You're crazy. Why are you wasting your time? Why bother doing that? Yet somehow, some way, we transform the impossible into I'm possible. And I love the blueprints and the plans and the strategies, Morley, that you've put together. And now on the health side, we can do exactly the same thing because, again, our first wealth really is our health. So, Morley, as we go into wrap up mode, I've asked you this question a few other times. I'm going to ask it to you a third time. And what I love about it, every time we speak, you've changed as a person, as we all do. And whatever's going on in your life, you give me a different answer. And there's such wisdom in it. So, for the benefit of our listeners, because again, Deep Wealth Nation continues to grow, it's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth Podcast where I have the privilege, I have the honor of asking the same question to all the guests. And again, for the third time, and we'll see where you go, Morley. Maybe it's the same as last time, maybe it's different. You choose. But when you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So, Morley, it's a fun part. It's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car there, it's curbside. The door is open. It's waiting for you to hop on in, which you now do. And you're going to go back to any point in your life. Morley, as a young child, as a teenager, whatever point in time that would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Morley, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
What's really funny, Jeffrey, is there's a theater here in Chapel Hill that shows the old movies. And for Mother's Day, we went back to see The Wizard of Oz. It's very different on a two-story screen than it is watching it on TV. Point out that Dorothy uses a copper pail with water in it to put out the fire of the witch. But just yesterday, what movie did we watch?
Is that serendipity or what, Morley?
What's really funny is I forget this question every time. I've asked you twice, I can't remember. But what time would I go to? What's interesting, I'm going to maybe throw you a curve because I've used that analogy with people that the literature is getting easier and easier for me to read. And I made a comment to one of my students about a month ago. And I said, it just feels like I'm reliving a past life. And she said, no, more. You're not living a past. You came here from the future. And I think I'd like to take that DeLorean to 2050 and what we understand about optimizing health, and then bring the DeLorean back to the 1950s. Do it twice. I want to figure out what is the enduring qualities of optimizing health 30 years out, and then swing back and introduce that in some form or fashion for humanity to take advantage of. I think right now there's a lot of suffering, an untold amount of suffering. And I guess the good guy in me wants to help ease that suffering. Because I think it's possible. Not that there's no ego behind this. It's just because it's the right thing to do. I've never heard you say this before. Maybe I'm sure you have said it, but it didn't register until today. Impossible, I'm possible. I love that. That's really what this is about. I decided that this impossible world that we live in, that I could be a contributing factor, making it possible to live without discomfort, live without pain, and live without metabolic insanity. And I don't know, I never would have imagined my life would be so fulfilled, so enriched by knowledge, by conversation like we're having, by interaction with clients. Talk about my cup runneth over. To be at this tender age and see this legacy of benefit that's unfolding. And as I say to my students, think about where the RCP is going to be 50 years. Think about what it's going to be like in 2075. Think about what we will have learned by a couple generations of people really refining this. And what we're really intrigued by are the RCP babies, and the moms who have committed themselves to these principles produce babies that the pregnancy is completely different, the birthing experience is completely different, the children are completely different than the ones that weren't RCP. Well, that's what our ancestors had. They were producing natural, healthy, happy people. And that's what we're trying to get back to. And I don't know, that's a very long-winded response to your simple, where do you want to go in the DeLorean? But that's really what it's about, is tapping into the wisdom of the future and then introducing these principles into a society of the past that is struggling, because I don't think we're meant to be in. That's not why we're here. We're here to learn lessons. And I'd like to share those lessons with people in a very time appropriate way as possible.
It's a terrific thought experiment, Morley, and we can have a whole episode on that, just what you shared and how RCP, your system, the root cause protocol, imagine that one life was changed, and the one life that was changed went on to do something tremendous for humankind. That'd be incredible. But let me ask you this just as we round it out and before we go into wrap up mode officially here. So I want you to imagine, just like in Back to the Future, when Doc, that mad scientist, his hair is all over the place,
That's right. Yeah.
where Doc from the future comes to Doc from the past. So Morley, the future Morley, coming to the very startled present day Morley, whenever that would be, what would you tell the present day Morley once you got over the shock of, hey, that's me, but from the future? Okay, let me listen to what's being said because it must be important. What do you think that message would be? I'm just curious.
Stay true to your principles. And you may have heard of the motto of the Coast Guard. It's called Semper Paratus, which is always prepared. And the motto of the Marines here in the States is Semper Fidelis, always faithful, which got shortened to Semper Fi.
Mm-hmm.
But the motto of the RCP is simplify. And I think that future Doc would tell the current Doc, stay true to that principle. Simplify. And anytime we can ease the process, because I think as people listen to this, a lot of moving parts in these stops and starts. But what we tried to do is really simplify and refine it so that anyone can do this. And there are many, many people who've had the benefit of this protocol who've never read the book, never heard of this podcast or any other podcast I've done. They just learn about it on the internet and they do it. But I think any way that we can simplify this principles and simplify their execution, that's what I would hope that the future Doc would advise the current Doc to do.
Terrific. Simplify. And really, when you think about that as entrepreneurs, big picture wise, isn't that what we're doing? We're taking a complex, painful problem, figuring it out, and then simplifying it that others, we can help them remove that pain and get on with their life to a much better life because of what we're doing. Really a true entrepreneur with what you're doing, Morley, in the entrepreneurial spirit, and you're paying it forward for all of us to give us a life without pain. Imagine that. It's actually possible. It doesn't have to be in a movie or in a fictional book. That's what you're doing. And so as we wrap this up now, Morley, and again, it's all in the show notes. That said, though, a listener who wants to learn more about the root cause protocol, they have some questions, they even want to get some coaching from you or become a client, where would be the best place to reach you?
Certainly social media, the Facebook group, the Magnesium Advocacy group, or the RCP page, the website, therootcauseprotocol.com, where the short version is RCP. We have an RCP community. We have an RCP Institute. For those who want to take a deeper dive, we have a 16-week training program, and you can find that on the resources tab. For those, what I just learned recently, Jeffrey, I've been on 88 different podcast programs and have had over 325 episodes. And when I learned that, I'm going to shoot for 100 and 500. So I'm going to keep at this. And people who want to reach out to me personally, it's my first and last name, Morley Robbins, at email.com. And then I always give out my phone number for those courageous few, 847-922-8061. And I do that for a reason, because there are some people that absolutely need a more in-depth understanding of what's going on, and I'm always happy to share that. Highlight of my week, though, I should point out, Jeffrey, is when I answer the phone, and people always go hypoxic. You really do answer the phone. It's very funny when it happens. And so I just warn you, I am going to answer the phone, and just be prepared for a conversation. Look forward to it.
Terrific. And again, for Deep Wealth Nation, all of that will be in the show notes. It's a point and click. It doesn't get any easier. And Morley, with that said, congratulations. It's official. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.